Have you ever wondered what really happens inside a narcissist's mind when you leave them? Not what they show, but what they hide. Do they suffer, regret, or beg you to come back? Or is it all just another act in their endless performance? At first glance, everything seems calm. They smile. They post happy photos. They flaunt someone new as if their world never shook. But don't be deceived. Behind those smiles lies a mind in panic, an ego crumbling piece by piece, and an ancient fear rising from the depths, the fear of being forgotten. A narcissist doesn't love you in the way ordinary people understand love. To them, you are a source of energy, a mirror that keeps their illusion alive. They don't want you to be happy. They want you to reflect their greatness. So when you walk away, they don't just lose a relationship, they lose themselves. They lose the mirror that made them feel real. Deep down, they don't grieve the loss of you, they grieve the loss of power. They don't regret hurting you, they regret no longer having someone to manipulate, someone to project onto, someone to define their existence. The void you leave behind isn't the absence of love, but the absence of reflection, and for those who live off illusion, that void is a bottomless abyss. Today, we will step inside that inner world where masks begin to crack, and the fear of exposure outweighs even the fear of loneliness. We'll peel back each layer of that ego to reveal what they've spent their entire lives running from, their true self. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear is not just their story. It's a mirror held up to all of us. For in leaving a narcissist, the scariest part isn't just watching them fall apart. It's realizing the shadow within you that they once awakened. 1. They quickly seek a new source of supply. They rush to find a new source of supply not because they've moved on, but because they cannot bear the emptiness you left behind. When you walk away, what collapses inside them is not love, but the false psychological structure built upon control. A narcissist doesn't truly love anyone. They only know how to reflect themselves through others. You were the mirror that once helped them believe they existed. And when that mirror disappears, they see the void. That void is the truth they fear the most. For them, emotions are not something to feel, they are tools to use. They know how to perform, how to cry, how to speak words of repentance that sound sincere, but all for one single purpose: to maintain emotional power. When you cut off that energetic supply, they spiral into a state of deep panic, like an addict deprived of their drug. Not because they love you, but because they need you to keep feeling valuable. That's why their instinctive reaction is to find a new supply as fast as possible. It's not love, it's ego survival. A narcissist cannot live in silence, because silence forces them to face themselves. They need noise, texts, compliments, admiration, even envy, anything that keeps them from confronting the emptiness inside. You'll see them quickly with someone new hand in hand, smiling brightly on social media. But don't be fooled. That is not healing. It's substitution, a temporary fix for an emotional addict. They are not in love. They are running. They're trying to prove to the world and to themselves that they still matter, that they are not the one who was left behind. Every photo, every cryptic caption, every staged smile is a silent cry for help from a collapsing soul. But the irony is, this new supply is just a replay of the same tragedy. At first, the new person will be swept into the love-bombing storm, dazzled, charmed, believing it's destiny. But soon, they too will see the shadows, the control, the subtle manipulation, the doublespeak. And when the excitement fades, the narcissist's addiction reawakens, calling them back to their old dose, not because they still love you, but because you were once the most reliable source of emotional energy. They miss the way you looked at them with trust, the power they felt when they made you doubt yourself, the intoxication of controlling your emotions. For them, it's not love, it's an addiction to power. And when the craving calls, they'll try to return through a nostalgic text, a polished apology, or an accidental encounter meant to soften your heart. The truth is, for a narcissist, no breakup is ever final. They always leave a door slightly open, a small crack to slip back through when the new supply runs dry. In their world, everyone is just a supporting actor in a movie they direct. And you, even after walking away, remain the character they believe they can summon at will. But here's what you must remember. That cycle only exists as long as you react. Every time you reply, you feed their energy. Every time you explain, you give them power. When you stay silent, they lose their life force. When you stand still in peace, their addiction has nothing left to cling to. That's when the real power shifts, not through shouting matches, but through the calm of someone who has seen through the game. 2. They use tricks to pull you back. When the new supply no longer gives them that rush, when the admiring eyes of others no longer mirror back the grand image they believe themselves to be, the narcissist begins to suffocate spiritually. The initial thrill fades. The intoxication of power wears off, leaving behind a cold emptiness, the same void they once tried to fill with you. In that moment, longing arises. But it's not longing for you as a person. It's the craving to reign again inside someone's mind, to be looked at through innocent, trusting eyes, to see reflected the light they cannot generate themselves. That's when they restart their old ritual of summoning, love, bombing. They know how to return like rain after drought, gentle, unexpected, seemingly sincere. They understand that to make you open your heart again, they must recreate the beginning, the moment you once believed meeting them was destiny. Late-night texts, familiar phrases, old songs, places, and memories resurrected like sacred symbols, all used as emotional rituals to slip back into your heart. I've changed. No one understands me like you. I never stopped thinking about you. It sounds heartfelt, but it's only the echo of an ego fighting to survive. Love bombing isn't just sweet words. It's a full psychological campaign engineered to dismantle the boundaries you've just built. They suddenly become tender, patient, attentive qualities they never had before. They listen to you. They praise the smallest things they once mocked. They study you like a strategist studies an enemy, knowing where the weak spots are, when to stay silent, when to shed a tear, when to apologize. But behind every gesture lies intention, not emotion. They don't want to love you, they want to win you. They don't seek reconciliation, they seek to restore the power they lost when you walked away. To make you believe they've changed is their ultimate victory, because it proves they can still control your emotions, still bend your will with words. Love bombing, at its core, is not love. It's psychological dark magic where feelings are manipulated to serve the ego. And you, with your once open heart, become the sacrifice for their game. Then, once they get what they want, the mask falls faster than before. Tenderness turns to coldness. Care shifts to contempt. Love becomes accusation. They'll say, "You're too sensitive. You never change. You're the real problem." Familiar lines meant to flip the script and pin the blame back on you. Because for a narcissist, love was never a meeting of souls. It was always a stage for worship. And when you leave, they lose their audience. So they come back, not to love, but to drag you back into the audience, to clap for their performance, even as your heart bleeds. Remember this. Love bombing is not proof of change. It is the dying reflex of a collapsing ego. When you stop reacting, the spell breaks. When you stay silent, they lose energy. And when you look them in the eye without fear, the game ends not because you won, but because you woke up. 3. The pity party, the final act of a dying ego. When love bombing no longer works, when your silence remains steady like a rock in the storm, the narcissist begins to crumble. They cannot comprehend why their old magic has lost its power. All their life, they've survived by manipulating other people's emotions. So when that power evaporates, a terrifying emptiness rushes in. Your silence is not indifference. It is a mirror reflecting the truth. They never had any real power beyond your reactions. And in that panic, they move to their next tactic, the pity play, also known as the pity party. If before they attacked with charm, now they attack with tears. They cast themselves as the victim of the very story they once directed. They scatter emotional monologues. I tried everything, but you're just so cold. You left me without giving me a chance. Enthus. I still love you. You just never understood. They turn the breakup into a one-sided tragedy where they are the betrayed soul and you are the heartless one. A narcissist knows exactly how to exploit compassion, because that is the only language that ever made you surrender. They know your heart is empathetic, that you feel deeply for others' pain, and they weaponize that goodness as a form of control. They are not seeking love, they are seeking reaction. In their world, attention, whether pity or anger, is still energy that feeds the ego. During this stage, you might hear from mutual friends, see social media posts, or receive accidental messages about how miserable they are, how broken, how truly regretful. Don't believe it. Every script is carefully staged. They are testing the connection, checking whether the old cord still conducts energy. A nostalgic post, a vague caption, a coincidental encounter, all are the calls of an energy addict desperately searching for their next fix. If the pity act fails to move you, they escalate. They'll trigger triangulation, the classic but cruel game. They flaunt the new person, painting a picture of perfect love, laughter, and happiness. They know you'll see it, and that's the point. They want to stir confusion within you. Have they changed? Was it my fault? They want to awaken your sense of inadequacy, to lure you back onto the old stage, just to prove that you're still good enough. But when you still don't react, no jealousy, no anger, no pain, they lose control completely. The final mask falls. They erupt in rage, smearing you, twisting truths, spreading lies, even sabotaging your reputation. This fury doesn't come from hatred. It comes from the collapse of their illusion of control. Because in that moment of your silence, you have become what they fear most, the mirror of truth. The truth that they were never strong, they merely fed on others' energy. The truth that their so-called love was never love, only possession dressed in romance. The truth that without someone to manipulate, their ego dissolves like smoke in the wind. And that is the beginning of the narcissistic collapse, when every mask disintegrates and a desolate soul is exposed. Their rage is the death cry of a dying ego. The one who once hurt you becomes, ironically, the most pitiful, not because they lost you, but because they never truly had themselves. You don't need revenge. Your calm is the lesson they will never forget. And in that silence, you're not just escaping a toxic relationship, you're leaving an entire illusionary world where love was replaced by power and emotion was turned into a weapon. Your silence marks the end of their pity party. It is the quiet yet most powerful declaration: I am awake. 4. They unleash the flying monkeys when darkness needs someone to carry its wings. When every direct tactic fails, when love bombing can't melt you, pity play can't reach you, and triangulation no longer shakes you, the narcissist escalates to a colder, more ruthless, and more sophisticated level. They summon the flying monkeys. The term may sound comical, but its meaning is deeply sinister. These are the people the narcissist recruits to keep controlling you after losing the ability to do it directly. They can be mutual friends, relatives, co-workers, even family members, people who appear innocent but have been drawn into the web of deceit. The narcissist has prepared for this stage long before the end. While you believed the relationship was just between two people, they were quietly planting distorted stories in others' ears, painting themselves as the misunderstood victim who loved the wrong person, who tried their best but was never appreciated. So when everything collapses, all they have to do is activate the script. Cry, confess, lament, admit. But those confessions are not truth. They are well-crafted monologues where they are always the victim and you are always the villain. She's changed. He suddenly became cold and emotionless. I tried to love, but they pushed me away. These lines spread through the flying monkeys like toxic wind. Gradually, the atmosphere shifts. Old friends grow quiet. Some avoid eye contact. Others look at you with doubt. You haven't said a word. Yet the world around you starts to judge. That's their goal, isolation. Because when you're isolated, you weaken. When you're weak, you react. And when you react, they win. They want you to speak so they can twist your words into proof that you're unstable. They want you to hurt so they can say you're obsessed. They want you angry so they can label you unable to let go. In their game, the more you try to prove your innocence, the guiltier you appear. The saddest part is that most flying monkeys aren't evil. They're just unconscious souls, easily trusting, easily moved, easily swayed by a well-told story. They believe they're helping a hurting person, not realizing they've become tools in a smear campaign. The narcissist manipulates not only emotions, but also collective perception. Why do they do this? Because they understand one thing: if they can't control you, they'll control your image. It's their final, desperate attempt to preserve a collapsing ego. They need someone, anyone, to still believe they're the good one, so they don't have to face the truth that they've lost the only thing that ever made them feel powerful: emotional dominance over you. From a Jungian perspective, this is the moment when the shadow has nowhere left to hide, so it must project outward, onto others, onto the crowd, onto society. They can't bear the light of truth, so they create a cloud of smoke to cover the cracks in their soul. And you, once their mirror, now become the image they must destroy, so no one else sees their darkness reflected there. But remember, truth never needs to scream. Time is always the ally of the innocent. You don't need to argue, to explain, or to reclaim the narrative, because reputation can be stolen, but dignity never can. Your silence now is not surrender. It is intentional victory. While they are busy manufacturing chaos, you are walking out of the labyrinth into the calm of someone who knows that every lie eventually collapses under its own weight. Your silence is the final mirror they cannot shatter, because in it they see their true reflection, an empty soul trembling in the fear of being forgotten. And that is the narcissist's most painful defeat, not when you leave them, but when you become unshakable beyond defamation, because your peace no longer depends on being understood. 5. They watch you when darkness quietly stalks the light. This is the stage where the true face of the narcissist appears most clearly. No more glossy disguise, no more pitiful roles, only an empty soul quietly observing you to feel like it still exists. They once said you were nothing. They once acted disdainful, indifferent, even mocked your pain. But now, when you are silent, when you no longer react, when your life continues without them in it, they panic. Because they realize what they lost isn't just a person, but a mirror. And when that mirror disappears, they no longer know who they are. So they begin to watch, quietly, secretly, sometimes desperately. Every line you write, every photo you post, every story you share becomes living data for their obsessive mind. They watch from fake accounts. They ask acquaintances to keep tabs. They accidentally, like an old post. They're not reading out of curiosity, they're reading out of addiction. They're not looking because they care, they're looking because they can't stand that you're no longer within their orbit. For narcissists, attention is spiritual oxygen. When you are silent, you are draining all the air from the space they live in. They suffocate. They desperately seek one more breath, even if it's just through a photo, a sentence, a vague glimpse of your life. It's the behavior of an addict to emotional energy who no longer has access to the old supply, still wandering nearby to sniff a familiar scent. And then, if they see you happy, calm, radiant, it's like a knife to their ego. They cannot stand your freedom, because your freedom mirrors their inner prison. They cannot stand your peace, because that peace proves they were never the center of the universe. What you call happiness, to them, is the collapse of their power. So they try every way to touch you again, not with love, but with experiments. A text accidentally sent to the wrong person, a comment on an old post, a seemingly random reaction emoji. All of it is emotional probing, checking whether they can still make you waver, still pull a reaction, even just a second of confusion or a light brush against memory. To them, if you react at all, you've returned to the stage. But what they never understand is this. Your silence isn't a void, it's a door to awakening. Each time they visit your page, they don't see you, they see themselves, stripped bare, exposed, with no one left to reflect them. They see someone they can't control, can't define, can't possess, and that terrifies them more than loneliness. They watch you not out of love, but to grasp a sense of existence in a world where they're no longer the center. Paradoxically, the more they watch, the smaller, weaker, and more lost they feel. Because you have become something they can't touch, a free, lucid version of yourself who no longer needs to be seen to be validated. And it's precisely in that moment when they keep watching and you don't look back that the power dynamic reverses. No longer you orbiting them, but them pulled into the gravity of your silence. No longer you seeking answers in their eyes, but them searching for traces of themselves in your life. Your silence becomes the lesson they never forget. That some souls can only see themselves once others stop reflecting them. That sometimes the greatest cruelty isn't retaliation, it's the serenity of someone who understands. And that is when you truly exit the labyrinth. As for them, though they still watch, still look, still crave control, they are forever trapped in the loop of their own darkness. 6. They threaten you. When the mask cracks and the naked ego trembles before its own shadow. When the last-ditch efforts from silent stalking to those accidental nudges no longer elicit any reaction, the narcissist enters the most frightening stage. They realize the power is truly gone. To them, power isn't just a tool. It's oxygen, identity, the only way they know they exist. Losing power over you is a symbolic death of the ego, and to avoid that feeling they will do anything, including sowing fear. This is when their true nature surfaces no more charming veneer or soft words. They once declared you useless, belittled you to elevate themselves, but now every line you write, every step you take, every small sign that you're better than before keeps them up at night. They don't watch out of love, but because they can't bear being excluded from your world. And when that addiction to power isn't satisfied, their darkness begins to spill out. Jung calls this the collapse of the persona, when the mask they've worn for so long shatters, and they are forced to face what they've always avoided, the emptiness. For them, the feeling of losing control is a slow death. From obsession, they shift to anger. From anger to hatred. And when hatred peaks, threats become the weapon of last resort. At first, the threats are wrapped in pain. I can't live without you. If you don't respond, I don't know what might happen. You don't understand, I'm truly losing control. They sound like pleas, but they're emotional traps tests to see if you still fear, still react, still allow them into your mind. If you reply at all, even don't do that, even calm down, you fed them energy. When they see you no longer respond, the victim mask falls, revealing the face of the intimidator. Sweet words turn into threats. You'll regret this. I'll make everyone see who you really are. You think you can escape me? These aren't outbursts, they're tactics. They can't manipulate you with love, so they pivot to manipulating you with fear. Some will suddenly appear where you used to go just to manufacture a chance encounter. Some will use intermediaries accidentally sending messages, accidentally reviving old stories. The goal isn't to meet you, it's to make you never feel safe. They want you in a half-believing, half-fearing state, always looking over your shoulder because they know fear is also a form of connection. Worse, some will threaten self-harm. If you don't reply, I'll do something stupid. Don't mistake this for a cry for help. It's the final manipulation, exploiting your compassion to pull you back. They don't plan to end it, they plan to drag you down with them. When every tactic fails, they move to public revenge. They fabricate, smear, distort, even invent stories that make you the villain. They may sabotage your work, relationships, even threaten your honor. In their psychology, if they can't make you belong to them, they'll try to make you belong to no one. They want you to hurt not out of hatred, but because your pain helps them feel they still exist. Online, they hide behind cryptic posts, vague captions, toxic metaphors only you understand. They want you to read, to rage, to react. Every glance, every reply is a drop of blood nourishing their dying ego. And when you no longer react, your silence becomes the mirror reflecting their helplessness. This is when the so-called ego collapse truly occurs. The one who once manipulated you now falls into their own maze. No supply, no reflection, no audience, they begin to unravel. Some rush to new sources to patch the void. Some sink into depression, lose control, or become violent. But whatever the form, the core is always the same: the terror of being forgotten. For the narcissist, being forgotten is worse than death. It erases them from the symbolic map where they were once special. Yeah. So if you've received threatening messages, venomous words, or behaviors aimed at making you unsafe, understand this. They don't threaten you because you're weak. They threaten you because you're stronger than they imagined. They don't intimidate out of power, but out of despair. They attack because they can't reach you with love anymore, and they fear because you've moved beyond their grasp. When you hold firm boundaries, block all channels, keep evidence, and do not react, you force them to face what they fear most, themselves. Your silence declares loudly that the game is over. No revenge, no proofs, no more words needed. In the end, threats are not power, they're the death cry of a disintegrating ego. And you, standing there, calm, steady, unafraid, you haven't just escaped them. You've escaped the entire cycle of darkness that once imprisoned your soul. You don't need to beat them, because when you're no longer afraid, you've already won. 7. They collapse completely when darkness has no one left to reflect. This is the narcissist's true ending, not with a bang, not with theatrical tragedy, but with the quiet disintegration of an ego with nothing left to cling to. When threats, manipulation, and smears all fail, when there's no one left to blame or to reflect them, when there are no eyes left to borrow a sense of self, they begin to fall into an invisible dusk, a bottomless void with no echo. It's the moment of ego collapse when the imaginary world they built and believed to be reality begins to crack piece by piece. Everything they use to define themselves, power, admiration, the image of being special, the worshipful eyes around them, dissolves, leaving an emptiness that cannot be filled. With no one left to reflect them, they no longer know who they are. With no one left to blame, they're forced to hear the echo within, and that is the most horrifying sound to them: silence. They are no longer the powerful figure you once feared. They become a shadow of themselves, exhausted, lost, swallowed by what they always denied, the inner void. They may try to smile, to post happy photos, to wear the costume of "I've changed," but the smile has no soul. Inside is a quiet turmoil, insomnia, anxiety, meaninglessness, and the constant fear of being forgotten. In Jung's language, this is the dark night of the ego. A person can only be reborn by facing their shadow, but the narcissist cannot, because they've been fed all their life by running from themselves. With no one left to reflect them, they look in the mirror and see nothing, only a vast black emptiness. When the light of reflection goes out, the darkness within spills over and consumes consciousness. Some go mute, withdraw from society, and live like a ghost in their own life. Others flee into extremes: alcohol, sex, money, power, pseudo-piety, or half-baked spiritual awakenings, all to hide the truth that they've lost the ability to feel themselves. But whatever they choose, the core terror remains: fear of being forgotten. In the narcissist's inner world, not being seen is not existing. At times, they still watch you not out of love, but to measure their own failure. They see you serene, luminous, walking on without them, and that suffocates them more than any retaliation. Your peace mirrors their chaos. Your freedom proves their power is gone. They understand, though they'd never admit it, that they lost the only thing that was ever real, a soul that once loved them without needing to worship them. When that realization flickers, even for a second, collapse becomes inevitable. They try to rebuild themselves with new images, more moral, more spiritual, more humble, but each is just another version of the same mask. Inside, they're still the panicked child, standing in a dark room, with no one to reflect them, no one to blame, and no one to love. The narcissist's collapse doesn't happen outside, it happens in consciousness. They don't die physically. They die in spirit layers of ego, slough off, illusions crumble. They lose the capacity for genuine joy, lose connection to others, lose the ability to trust, and finally, lose themselves. The more they try to look fine, the deeper they sink into their own pretense. The more they try to prove happiness, the more they expose the void. Then, one night, usually in silence, with no audience left, they face themselves. No applause, no one to manipulate, no one to blame. They look in the mirror and for the first time see their real face, empty, tired, aged, soulless. This is what psychology calls mortification, the putrefaction of the ego. Not physical death, but the collapse of the entire false structure they took to be themselves. There is pain, panic, and despair as they realize they have never truly lived. And you, once trembling in fear, once believing they had limitless power, now stand on the other side, free and still. You need no revenge, no proof. Truth has done its work. The one who wounded you most deeply is now wounded by the very truth they cannot face. And you understand that victory isn't making them regret, it's no longer needing to care. The narcissist continues to exist, still smiling, still talking, still performing, but the light in their eyes is gone. They will try to fabricate a new illusion, a new person, a new life, a new "I've changed." But you know that, in the silence, only a soul slowly dissolving remains. For once the empath is silent, the narcissist begins to hear their true echo, and that is the sound they can never endure. Carl Jung once said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You've done that. You saw the darkness, named it rightly, and walked through. They, facing their own darkness, were swallowed by it. In the end, the narcissist doesn't truly die, they simply disappear. Disappear from people's hearts, from attention, from the story. They become a wandering shadow in memory, living off scraps of attention, seeking new mirrors, yet never finding themselves. That is their deepest tragedy, to go on living without ever truly being alive. And you, standing in a new dawn, no longer need their gaze to know you exist. You need no one's approval to feel enough. You've pulled your energy from the old tragedy and placed it back into yourself. You didn't just survive, you were reborn. They collapse in silence, and you rise in the light. And then, when all the storms have passed, when you can look back with eyes no longer wet, you realize this: what collapsed wasn't just a relationship, but an entire system of illusion where love was swapped for power, kindness exploited as a tool, and empathy treated as weakness. And it is precisely there that you awakened. The narcissist entered your life as a lesson from the dark. They didn't just wound you, they peeled away your own disguises, forced you to face the wounds you once hid, and made you learn how to stand without anyone coming to save you. They were the fire that burned away your illusions so you could find your true self beneath the ash. And after you walked through it all, pain, betrayal, loss, isolation, even fear, you understood. Healing doesn't come from their remorse. It comes from no longer needing it. You no longer want them to see your worth because you have seen it yourself. You don't need their apology because the peace within you is the greatest forgiveness of all. You don't need to prove anything because true light doesn't need recognition. It only needs to be. The narcissist will continue their journey, seeking other mirrors to reflect them, passing through other souls to feel temporarily real. But you are different. You are no longer a mirror. You are a source of light. You've learned that silence is not weakness, but the presence of strength. You understand that boundaries are not coldness, but self-respect. And you know that true love does not make you lose yourself. It brings you back to yourself. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You have done exactly that through your own journey. You dared to walk through the darkness, not to escape it, but to understand it. You look straight at what once terrified you, and there you found your strength. As the narcissist collapses inside their illusion, you rise in awareness. As they lose their world of reflections, you discover the real world within. And that is the quiet yet greatest victory. You did not merely leave them, you left the old version of yourself. Because in the end, light does not need to be seen to shine. It only needs to know that it is light.